Imagine being at your workplace doing your job with dignity when a cop storms in, treating you like a criminal just because of the color of your skin. But what happens when the man he targets refuses to be broken and teaches that cop a lesson he'll never forget?
It was a quiet Tuesday morning at Marcus Johnson's job site, a mid-sized office building downtown where he worked as a building supervisor. Marcus was a tall, calm man in his early 40s, known for his patience and professionalism. His days usually started early, checking maintenance requests, making sure the lobby looked spotless, and greeting tenants with his warm, good morning smile. People loved Marcus because he always carried himself with respect, and he treated everyone equally, whether it was the CEO walking in with a $2,000 suit or the janitor finishing a night shift. That morning, Marcus had just finished checking the boiler system in the basement when he came up to the lobby. He paused for a moment, sipping coffee, and looked at the sunshine streaming through the glass doors. Another normal day, or so he thought. But then, the front door slammed open with a sharp thud. A uniformed police officer, tall and broad, stormed inside. His eyes darted around the lobby until they landed on Marcus. His hand hovered near his belt, not pulling his weapon, but resting on it in that intimidating way officers sometimes did when they wanted to show authority. "Hey, you," the officer barked, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "What are you doing here?" Marcus blinked, confused. He was wearing his ID badge on his chest, neatly clipped to his shirt, and his tool belt clearly marked his role. Still, he stayed calm. "Good morning, officer. I work here. Is there a problem?" The cop's eyes narrowed, suspicious. "Work here? You got ID to prove that. Don't play games with me." Marcus tilted his head, slightly. "Yes, I do. It's right here on my shirt. Marcus Johnson, building supervisor." He pointed calmly at the badge, but the officer didn't even glance at it. Instead, the cop stepped closer, towering over him. "Don't get smart with me. Show me real identification. Driver's license, state ID, whatever you've got. Let's see it now." The tension in the room thickened. A few tenants who had been walking through the lobby slowed down, whispering to each other. Marcus could feel the weight of their eyes on him. This wasn't the first time he'd been profiled, but it stung every time. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, and yet here he was, treated like a criminal in his own workplace. He exhaled slowly, holding his ground. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. My ID is right here, clearly visible. If you want to know whether I belong here, you can ask anyone in this building. They'll tell you who I am." The cop's face hardened. "Don't tell me how to do my job. I asked for ID, so you'd better hand it over. Unless you've got something to hide." Marcus's jaw clenched. That phrase, "something to hide," was always the trap. He'd seen it before. Comply, and they still find a way to belittle you, resist, and they twist it into an excuse for escalation. He wasn't about to play into that. "Officer," Marcus said firmly but politely, "with all due respect, you stormed into my workplace demanding ID when I am literally wearing my badge. You've got tenants here watching. You're embarrassing yourself, not me." A murmur spread among the bystanders. A young woman whispered, "He does work here. That's Marcus. He's been here for years." Another man chimed in, "Yeah, he's the supervisor. This cop's got it wrong." But the officer ignored them, his pride flaring. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a black man standing tall and confident. "Listen here," he growled, stepping even closer. "You either give me your ID right now, or I'll have you in cuffs in the next 30 seconds. Your choice." The threat hung heavy in the air. Marcus could almost hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He thought about his family, about how many news stories started exactly like this. But he also knew his rights, and he knew he couldn't let this cop strip away his dignity in front of everyone. Taking a steady breath, Marcus looked the officer straight in the eyes. "If you think you have the right to arrest a man at his job, in front of witnesses, without cause, then go ahead. But I promise you this, when the truth comes out, and it won't be me who regrets it." The lobby fell silent. Tenants were pulling out their phones, recording the encounter. The officer glanced around, suddenly realizing just how many cameras were pointed his way. His arrogance faltered for a moment, though he tried to mask it with a scowl. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't back down. For the first time, it was the officer who looked unsure. The power dynamics had shifted, and that was just the beginning.
The silence in the lobby felt heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. Marcus stood firm, his gaze locked on the officer who was now visibly unsettled. The young tenants recording on their phones weren't trying to hide it anymore, they wanted the whole world to see what was happening. And that changed everything. Marcus knew this wasn't just about him now. It was about every man who had ever been humiliated at his own workplace, every woman who had been treated as if her word didn't matter, every black person who had been forced to prove their innocence while others were given the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't going to bend. Not this time. The officer, whose badge read Officer Blake, sneered and barked louder, trying to reclaim authority. "Put that coffee down. Hands where I can see them. Right now." Marcus, steady as a mountain, placed his cup gently on the counter. His voice was calm but carried across the lobby like a steady drumbeat. "My hands are right here, officer. No sudden moves. No threats. Just me. Standing where I belong." A tenant, an elderly woman named Mrs. Green who had lived in the building for years, stepped forward. She raised her voice, surprisingly strong for her age. "That's Marcus Johnson. He runs this place. He's the reason this building even functions. What you're doing is wrong, officer. Shame on you." The officer shot her a cold glare. "Ma'am, stay out of this. You don't know the situation." But she didn't back down. "I know enough. I know a man being disrespected when I see it. And I know Marcus is a good man." The crowd murmured in agreement. More phones went up, more whispers spread. The tide was shifting fast. Marcus felt a small swell of pride. He wasn't alone in this. People were watching and they weren't staying silent anymore. But Blake wasn't ready to let go of control. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "You think these people are gonna save you? You think a few recordings scare me? I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know how to make problems disappear." Marcus met his glare head-on. "Then you've been doing it wrong for 15 years. Because problems don't disappear, they come back louder, stronger, until justice is served. And right now, officer, you're the problem." The officer's face turned red. His hand twitched near his radio, maybe debating whether to call for backup. But the tension in the room was already against him. Backup wouldn't change the fact that he had walked into a man's workplace, demanded unnecessary ID, and threatened arrest without cause. And now there was undeniable proof in every corner of the lobby. Just then another tenant, a young professional in a suit, spoke up. "Officer, with all due respect, I think you're making a mistake. This man works here. We all know him. If you don't believe us, call the building management. Verify it. But harassing him in front of everyone isn't justice." Blake spun around, barking, "Shut it, all of you." But his voice cracked slightly, betraying his frustration. He wasn't used to resistance, and he definitely wasn't used to being outnumbered. Marcus took the chance to press further. "You came in here assuming I didn't belong. Not because of evidence, not because of suspicion, but because of what I look like. Isn't that right?" The officer's lips tightened, but he said nothing. His silence was as loud as a confession. "You asked for ID," Marcus continued. "But I've been wearing it in plain sight since the moment you walked in. And now half this lobby is telling you who I am. You're not after the truth, you're after control. But I don't answer to intimidation. Not here. Not ever." The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement. A few even applauded softly. The balance of power had shifted completely now, and Officer Blake knew it. But instead of backing down gracefully, he doubled down. "Fine. You want to play this game? You'll regret it. I'm detaining you until I can confirm your identity. You're coming with me." He reached forward, hand outstretched as if to grab Marcus's arm. And that's when something incredible happened. One of the tenants, a middle-aged lawyer who had been quietly recording the entire time, stepped directly between them. "Touch him," the lawyer said firmly, "and you'll be facing a lawsuit so fast your badge won't even have time to catch up. This man has rights. And right now you're violating them." The officer froze, hand hovering in the air. His eyes darted between Marcus, the lawyer, and the sea of phones capturing every angle. His authority was crumbling faster than he could rebuild it. Marcus didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply stood tall, dignity radiating from every inch of him. And for the first time since the confrontation began, Officer Blake looked like the smaller man in the room. The moment was clear. Marcus wasn't just defending himself, he was teaching a lesson. A lesson that would echo far beyond the walls of that lobby. And the cop knew it. The lobby was no longer just a lobby, it had transformed into a stage where the battle between dignity and arrogance played out for everyone to see. Marcus stood tall in the center, his ID badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights, while Officer Blake fumed like a kettle about to boil over. The lawyer, still standing protectively between Marcus and the cop, repeated firmly, "You put one hand on this man and you'll be explaining yourself in front of a judge, not just us." Phones were everywhere now. Dozens of little red lights blinked in Blake's direction, every angle covered, every word recorded. He could feel the walls closing in. Still, his pride was too big to let him step back gracefully. Blake's jaw flexed as he spat his words. "You think your cameras scare me? You think you can all just stand there, playing courtroom in my lobby?" "Our lobby," corrected Marcus, his deep voice steady. "This is where I work. These people live here. And right now, it looks like the only one who doesn't belong is you." The crowd gasped. Not because Marcus had shouted, he hadn't. He didn't need to. His words cut sharper than a yell ever could. Calm, precise, undeniable. Blake's cheeks flushed crimson. His authority was slipping and nothing infuriated him more. He lunged again, not with his hands this time but with his words. "All right, you want to act smart? Let me tell you how this goes. I'm within my rights to detain anyone who refuses to identify themselves." Marcus didn't blink. And I did identify myself. Multiple times. My name. My badge. My position. All right here. He tapped the laminated card clipped to his chest. "What you're doing is harassment, plain and simple." The lawyer added, "And illegal detention if you so much as touch him." More murmurs of agreement. More phones raised higher. Some tenants had even gone live on social media. The chat bubbles popping up on their screens reflected shock, outrage, and support for Marcus. The world beyond those glass doors was watching now. Blake's eyes darted nervously. He had stormed into the building thinking it would be an easy flex of power. Instead, he had walked into a wall of resistance, firm, calm, and unstoppable. Desperate, he tried to shift the narrative. "Why are you all defending him so hard? What's he hiding that makes you so protective? Maybe he doesn't want to show ID because..." "Because nothing," Marcus interrupted sharply, his voice ringing like a bell. "Because I don't have to bow to harassment. Because dignity is not a crime. Because working while black should not make me suspicious." The room froze at his words. Even the officer blinked, momentarily stunned. Marcus's tone wasn't angry, it was resolute. A lifetime of swallowed pride had sharpened his voice into steel. He turned slightly so everyone could hear him. "Every day people like me get asked to prove we belong while others get a free pass. Every day we're questioned, doubted, harassed. But today, right here in this lobby, I'm saying enough." The crowd erupted in applause. Some people cheered outright, their voices echoing off the walls. Blake's face twisted in rage, but the momentum was unstoppable now. "You think this is a game?" Blake shouted over the noise. "You think you can stand here and embarrass me?" "No," Marcus said simply, his voice cutting through the clamor. "You're embarrassing yourself." Another wave of applause. Blake's fists clenched at his sides. His instincts screamed at him to reassert dominance, but his mind was screaming something else. This is spiraling out of control. Every camera, every witness, every word Marcus spoke was another nail in the coffin of his so-called authority. Still, pride is a dangerous thing. He pulled out his radio, pressing the button with a sharp click. "Dispatch, this is Officer Blake requesting." But before he could finish, the lawyer spoke up again, voice like thunder. "Careful, officer. Everything you do from this point on is being documented. Call back up if you want. The only thing it'll do is make your mistake bigger, louder, harder to bury." Blake hesitated, finger hovering over the button. He looked around the lobby again, faces hard, phone steady, the truth staring back at him from every corner. For a moment, his hand trembled. Marcus stepped closer, not aggressive, just steady. "You walked in here thinking you could strip me of my dignity. But you forgot something important, officer. Respect isn't given because of a badge. Respect is earned. And right now you've lost it." The cop's radio lowered slowly. His breathing was ragged, jaw tight. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. But Marcus wasn't done. So here's the deal. You can keep pushing this and bury yourself deeper in the hole you've dug. Or you can walk out that door and think long and hard about why you felt the need to harass an innocent man at his job. The crowd roared in approval. Some tenants shouted, "Yeah, walk out." Others chanted Marcus's name. The atmosphere had transformed, no longer tense but electric. Blake stood frozen, caught between his pride and the undeniable truth that he had already lost. The more he stayed, the worse it would get. He knew it. Everyone knew it. And Marcus just stood there, arms crossed, calm as stone, waiting for him to decide.
The air in the lobby was electric, thick with the tension of something far greater than a simple ID check. Marcus stood tall, a wall of dignity that refused to be torn down, while Officer Blake's pride fought its last desperate battle. Every phone camera was a spotlight, every tenant was a witness, and there was no way out without consequences. Blake's knuckles whitened as he gripped his radio. His lips curled into a sneer. "You think this ends with your little speech? You think you can make me the villain here?" Marcus didn't move an inch. His voice, deep and calm, cut through the room like a steady drumbeat. "You don't need me to make you the villain. You've done that all by yourself." The crowd erupted again, a mix of applause, cheers, and gasps. The sound was overwhelming, drowning out even the hum of the AC. People were no longer just watching. They were participating. They were on Marcus's side, fully, vocally, and unapologetically. Blake's face flushed, his authority crumbling piece by piece. He was used to control, to fear, to silence. But here, silence had been replaced with voices, and fear had been replaced with defiance. "You're all making a mistake," Blake shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. "This man is refusing lawful orders. He's obstructing." "Obstructing what?" Marcus fired back. His words were sharp, but his tone was still composed. "Obstructing your ego, obstructing your need to treat me like less than I am. I've followed the law. I've followed policy. I've done my job. The only person breaking trust here is you." The lawyer in the suit raised his phone higher, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have this entire incident recorded. If this officer lays so much as a finger on Mr. Johnson, I'll have grounds for a civil rights lawsuit. And trust me, it'll hold." The crowd cheered again. Someone even shouted, "Justice for Marcus," and others joined in. The chant rose like a tide, shaking the very walls of the building. "Marcus! Marcus! Marcus!" The sound rattled Blake more than any threat could. His badge no longer commanded respect. It was a symbol of disgrace in that moment. And deep down, he knew it. But pride is a dangerous weapon. His hand twitched near his cuffs, like he was debating one last desperate move. The crowd fell quiet, everyone sensing the possibility of escalation. Marcus noticed it too, but he refused to flinch. He raised his voice so all could hear. "You want to put me in cuffs? Do it. Right here. In front of these witnesses. In front of these cameras. Arrest a man standing at his job, badge on his chest, no crime committed. Go ahead, officer. Show the world who you really are." The silence was deafening. Blake's eyes darted around the lobby, from phone to phone, face to face, the chants still echoing faintly in the background. His breathing grew heavier, his chest rising and falling like a man drowning in his own fury. Then, like a balloon finally popping, his shoulders slumped ever so slightly. His pride was bleeding out, and his authority had collapsed completely. "You people don't understand," he muttered, voice lower now. "You don't get what it's like out there." Marcus stepped forward, not aggressive, but firm, his presence commanding. "You're right, officer. I don't know what it's like to wear your uniform, but you don't know what it's like to wear my skin. You walk into rooms expecting respect. I walk into rooms having to earn it, prove it, and still be questioned. You came here today thinking you could make me feel small, but the truth is I'm not small. I never was. You just never saw me. The crowd went silent, hanging on every word. It wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about something much bigger. Something that every person in that lobby could feel in their bones. Marcus continued, his voice steady, almost solemn. You thought this was about ID. It was never about ID. It was about power. About whether you could strip me of mine. But I'm standing here, officer, still whole, still proud. And now you've shown everyone exactly what happens when arrogance meets truth. The room erupted, not in chants this time, but in thunderous applause. People clapped until their hands hurt, some even whistling, others shouting his name. The energy was unstoppable. Blake stood frozen, jaw tight, fists clenched, but his fight was gone. He glanced once more at Marcus, then at the sea of witnesses, and finally at the glass doors leading outside. His pride wanted to stay, but his instincts screamed to leave. With a sharp inhale, he clipped his radio back onto his belt. Without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed toward the exit. The glass doors hissed open, and with them went the weight of his arrogance. As soon as he stepped outside, the crowd inside erupted again, clapping, cheering, celebrating. Marcus stood still for a moment, letting the noise wash over him, his shoulders finally relaxing. He hadn't just defended himself. He had defended dignity, truth, and every person who had ever been made to feel like less. The lawyer stepped beside him, patting his shoulder. That was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. Mrs. Green, the elderly tenant, smiled with tears in her eyes. You showed him who the real man was in this room, Marcus. Don't you ever forget it. Marcus smiled, faintly, humble as always. I didn't do it alone. You all stood with me. That's what made the difference. And in that moment, the crowd knew this was bigger than one man's stand. It was proof that when dignity and community rise together, even the strongest walls of arrogance crumble. But Marcus also knew something else. This wasn't the end. Officer Blake's humiliation wouldn't just vanish. Somewhere out there, his pride still burned, and men like him rarely forgot. The battle was won, but the war for respect, for true equality, was far from over.
When the glass doors closed behind Officer Blake, the sound of his heavy footsteps fading into the street, the lobby finally felt like it could breathe again. The air was no longer thick with tension. It was charged with something different now. Something electric. Something unshakable. The applause carried on for several moments, rising and falling like waves. Marcus stood in the middle, his chest rising with steady breaths, not triumphant but grounded, as though the victory wasn't his alone. He had not shouted. He had not lashed out. Yet somehow his composure had cut deeper than rage ever could. The lawyer turned toward him, still recording. Marcus, I need you to know something. What you did today. It's bigger than this building. Bigger than this room. That officer walked in here expecting to control you, to silence you. Instead, you turned the tables, and now the whole world's going to see it. Marcus gave a small, tired smile. I didn't plan to be anyone's example. I just wanted to be left in peace to do my job. Sometimes, the lawyer replied, the people who never asked to be examples end up being the strongest ones. A few tenants approached, shaking Marcus's hand, some clapping him on the back. Mrs. Green reached up and hugged him tightly, her frail arms trembling with emotion. You gave me hope today, son. Don't you ever forget that. Marcus's throat tightened. He wasn't one for speeches, but he felt the weight of their eyes on him, waiting for words. And so, he spoke, not like a leader, not like someone delivering a grand statement, but like a man speaking from the deepest corner of his heart. I didn't fight him, Marcus began softly. Not really. I fought the idea that I had to prove myself over and over just to stand where I belong. I fought the silence that tells us to keep our heads down even when we're right. And I fought for the truth that dignity doesn't come from permission, it comes from within. The crowd listened in rapt silence. Some nodded, others wiped tears from their eyes. His words weren't rehearsed. They weren't polished. They were raw, honest, and real, and that's why they struck so deep. He glanced around at the phone still raised. If these videos go out, let them show more than a man standing up for himself. Let them show a community standing together. Because today, when one voice was challenged, 100 voices rose with it. That's the power that changes things. The applause that followed wasn't loud and chaotic this time. It was steady, rhythmic, unified, like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. But Marcus knew the story wasn't done. His mind drifted to Officer Blake. A man who carried a badge but not the wisdom it should represent. A man who had been taught power but not respect. Later that evening, after the crowd had gone and the building had grown quiet again, Marcus sat alone in his office. The maintenance logs lay untouched on his desk. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, tenants, and even strangers who had already seen clips spreading online. The video had gone viral faster than wildfire. One message stood out. It was from his son, a freshman in college. "Dad, I'm so proud of you. Everybody on campus is talking about you. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us." Marcus read the words twice, his vision blurring. For years, he had quietly shouldered the weight of injustice, never wanting to bring that burden home. But today his son had seen something different, not just the struggle but the strength. That night, as the city lights flickered outside his window, Marcus thought about the ripple effect. How one act of dignity could travel farther than fists, louder than rage, stronger than fear. He hadn't set out to be a teacher, but life had written the lesson for him anyway. And across town, Officer Blake sat in the darkness of his own living room, staring at his phone. The video was everywhere, on the news, on social feeds, on websites that criticized police misconduct. His name was being dragged through mud, his badge questioned, his authority mocked. But what haunted him most wasn't the headlines. It was the look in Marcus's eyes. Calm, unbroken, strong. He had seen defiance before plenty of times. But never like that. Never so controlled, never so powerful. It was the kind of look that couldn't be erased, couldn't be denied. For the first time in years, Blake felt something he hadn't expected. Shame. Back at the building, Marcus finally turned off his office light and headed home. The night air was cool, the streets quieter now. He thought of his father who had once told him, "Son, there will be days when the world tests your worth. Don't let it decide for you. Show them who you are." Today he had done just that. And as he walked into the night, Marcus knew that his stand wasn't just for himself. It was for his father. For his son. For Mrs. Green. For every person who had ever been told they didn't belong when they knew in their heart they did. The world would keep testing. That much was certain. But Marcus had proven something unshakable. Dignity, once claimed, could never be taken away. And that truth would echo far beyond the walls of any lobby.